to infinity and beyond!
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No. I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. Zach Owens here with Johnny Sobchak. Johnny, how are we doing today?
I'm doing really well, Zach. This is a great Sunday, late morning, early afternoon, in the world of movies, I think.
Is it because you're a born again Snyder stan? This is the podcast title. Zach and Johnny eat their words. Snyder cut rules. I think that's what we're gonna go with today for the headline.
That's a suitable title for sure. I don't know if I'd go as far as to say I'm a born again Snyder stan, but I will say I was wrong. You were wrong.
Oh, we're not too proud to admit it. This is in the world of being a film critic, someone who covers movies. You can have your doubts and your hesitations, but there's nothing better than being proven wrong. Like, nobody goes into a movie and is like, I want this to be 4 hours of garbage. I don't want to enjoy this.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So
I mean, that was
I'm all
definitely,
for it.
I'm all for it as well. And we're going to get into it more, but I am glad to say up top that I was wrong, and I am excited to discuss Zack Snyder's Justice League today.
As am I. You've been kind of doing the reverse of me. You know, I was doing the homework. You're turning in late assignments. I was doing the homework ahead of the release. So I had done, as people who have listened know, I watched Man of Steel, I watched BVS Ultimate Edition, and then I watched the original cut, the Justice League, leading up to this. And now you're kind of going back and going through it in reverse after having watched it. But
yeah,
interesting approach there. But today, before we get into it all, let's lay out the schedule. We've got the Snyder Cut review, of course. That's the meat of the episode. But we've also got the Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode 1. We're going to dive into that released on Friday on Disney+. Similar to how we did our WandaVision breakdowns, go through and just kind of see what we feel after one episode, see where we think this series is headed, the show. And of course, we've got our news, a little bit of discussion there to break down some stuff from this past week, and then the review. So exciting episode. What's going on off the top? I kind of hinted at it. You've been rewatching some Zack Snyder stuff. What else is going on, Johnny?
Yeah, man. So I actually got a little bit more filmage in this week than I feel like I usually would, just because I'm busy with work and whatnot. Earlier, like I think the day after we recorded last week, I got to watch Inherent Vice, which was Paul Thomas Anderson, one of the last films of his that I need to see because I'm a big fan of his, especially There Will Be Blood and Phantom Thread. And this is probably his most divisive film. I feel like people are very much like think it's a masterpiece, or they think it's like bad or just very, mixed. And I had just a blast with it. Very much up my alley, very much in the same vein of something like The Big Lebowski, kind of like a neo-noir, big convoluted mystery plot that doesn't really matter that much. It's more about the journey and like the characters that you meet along the way. And I thought it's an adaptation of a novel. And so it's not original PTA characters or story. And I still thought it worked. It feels very much in that same mode that he's usually in. And Joaquin Phoenix in the lead role is hilarious. Like, he's so funny. And just the whole cast is like amazing. I mean, I had no idea how stacked it actually is. And I'm not going to go into every person just because I think it's nice not knowing, but it's star-studded and more emotional than I thought it would be. And yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great. So I'd recommend, if you've been on the fence about checking it out, or just haven't gotten around to it yet, I would definitely recommend it. And I don't think you've seen it, Zach. I'm not sure what.
That's a pretty safe assumption there. I feel like I have not seen it.
Have you seen any PTA films?
I honestly don't think so. Of the ones you listed, like I haven't seen Phantom Thread, haven't seen There Will Be Blood, haven't seen this. What else was there? What else
Magnolia, Boogie Nights.
Nope.
Okay, well, you got your homework.
I know, I got my work cut out for me.
Apart from that, also rewatched Sound of Metal after the Oscars came out. I think my brother, he was like, "Hey, I want to watch Sound of Metal." Probably because he saw that it got some Oscar nominations. I was like, okay, hell yeah, I'm down to rewatch that. Watched it with him and his wife. They both loved it. They were both like, they didn't know exactly what to expect, and I don't think the film was what they expected. So that was nice, and they were both, pleasantly surprised and thought it was great. So that was fun. And then, as you already pointed out, I watched Zack Snyder's Justice League. I threw it on Friday or Thursday, because it came out Thursday, right? So I threw it on, and throughout the day I was kind of like checking in on it, ended up finishing it that night. And so it was a lot to absorb, and like I kind of broke it up a little bit. But I was, again, pleasantly surprised by what it ended up being. And then this weekend I've been visiting my girlfriend, and she had seen Man of Steel when it came out in theaters, hadn't seen it since, and had never seen BVS or Justice League. So she was pretty much, down to kind of recap those and watch this new thing. And I was like, hey, I'm down to rewatch them too, because I feel like with this new perspective of Justice League, we can go back and I feel like they do kind of recontextualize those earlier films a little bit, and I think make them a little bit better in retrospect. Because Man of Steel, I still think is like on the edge of being good, but it's not great. And I actually do prefer BVS now, the Ultimate Edition specifically. And I was kind of surprised that you did enjoy it more than Man of Steel, Zach. But now rewatching them all together, I think I feel the same. And then, we capped it off. We finished Zack Snyder's Justice League. This is my second time rewatching it. Reaffirmed how I already felt about it, and I think I liked it even more the second time. So, and it was her favorite out of all three of them, which I kind of expected just because I felt the same way already. But it's been a fun journey down memory lane, I think, because I was such a big fan of Man of Steel and BVS, like, when they came out years ago, and then my feelings kind of changed and tastes changed and whatnot. But I'm glad we got to this point, I guess, is what I would say.
Yeah, definitely. I did, like you said, and I guess I said as well, but I watched the Justice League this past week, and I'm really glad that I did that, first of all, because I hadn't seen it since theaters, and it was not as like god awful as I remembered, right. Just like from having seen it, and then like the discussion about it since then, like it only makes it appear even worse in your mind. But I ended up giving it like, I want to say like 2.5 stars, so it's not like it was like awful. But it was so important to, as I was watching the Snyder Cut now, to be like, okay, to have that frame of reference of like, this is what's different. This is what they changed, or how, not just like what was added, but also like what was still the same, but like tweaked, Yeah. So I think that provided like a really good like frame of reference for me, and it made me appreciate this new version a lot better as well. So I was watching both of those this week, and I guess we'll save that more of the Snyder talk till later in the episode. But other than that, I've been keeping up weekly with on the TV side, the show Young Rock, which is on NBC. And you know what? I'm gonna say it. It's pretty charming. Anybody who knows me knows that I am a Dwayne stan for DTRJ. But first episode, I was very, we'll see. So it's basically, this is like a look back on his whole life. So there's someone who plays him at like 7 years old or like 8 years old. And then there's one that plays him in like high school, and then one that plays him in college at Miami.
Okay, gotcha.
and then it's also like him in current day. Well, it's actually set in like 2024 or something maybe. But the whole premise is that he is running for president, and he's like doing interviews and looking back on his life. And so these are like flashbacks, but it's got like someone's playing Rocky Johnson, his dad, and like he's got his family members and other pro wrestlers and stuff in there. And so that's it's like spot on impressions. Like that, the actors are really good. It's good casting, but it's gotten better and better each week of just like being less of like, the first episode was very much like cable TV sitcom. Like, and then it's gotten better. And Randall Park is he's the hottest thing right now. He's the new Keanu, but he was the TV host interviewing Dwayne. But I'm very scared that this is going to end with him actually announcing a run for president at the end of the season finale or something.
I can't imagine that. Like, I just can't imagine someone who has it so made and is such a huge star and has such like an enjoyable life would choose to do that.
Take on that burden.
Yeah, that's too much.
I hope not, because we don't need another celebrity president.
Yeah,
I'm sure that Dwayne would be better than the last, but still not great.
Yeah, I think that's fair assessment there.
But other than that, these are things that I haven't dived into yet. But a big slate of home releases coming soon. We'll have write-ups on the site. But Godzilla 4K coming from Warner Brothers on the 23rd, so that should be Tuesday by the time you're listening to this. So I have never seen that before, so I've got that. I'm going to dive into that before Godzilla vs. Kong, which some good reviews come. I guess the social embargo just lifted before we hopped on, and so really, really solid stuff coming from that. So I've seen Kong Skull Island, and going to watch this and then watch King of the Monsters to do my homework there. And then breaking news in Yuba County from Warner Brothers as well, which came out in February on digital. But it's on hard copy now. So that's kind of like, it's Allison Janney and Mila Kunis. It's kind of like a dark comedy mystery thing, which I don't really know much about it, but it looks interesting. So gonna check that out. And then the 10 Commandments from Paramount, which I've seen. It's like, this is, speaking of the Snyder cut and 4-hour epics, like this is similar to your boy Lawrence of Arabia, right? A nice long old epic.
I haven't seen it. I just know it's kind of one of those biblical epics up there with kind of like, Ben-Hur and
right
from
1956. So it's dated, but it came out on 4K, or it is coming out on the March 30th. So well, just in time. I know it's not really the same story, but they're advertising it as just in time for Easter. So if you're if you're still stuck at home, can't make it to church, but you want to get some religion in for Easter Sunday, you can get the 10 Commandments on 4K and throw it on. 3 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah, I'm very curious. I mean, I feel like it's one of those movies I do need to go back and watch at some point, but I mean, it's just, again, a big commitment time-wise. And
definitely. I know it's like heralded as just like an all-time epic, and I've seen parts of it like just growing up, like it's been on TV on like Turner Classic Movie, like all the old movie channels and stuff, but I've never actually like sat down and watched it start to finish. So we'll see if I make it through, but just I guess that's got to be a great, from 1956 to come out on 4K now. I'm excited to see like just the restoration there.
Yeah, should be pretty impressive.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm excited for all of those to dive in. So hopefully I'll have some better breakdowns and more to talk about than just the Justice League and Young Rock next week in the What's Going On section.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shall we dive into the other thing that's going on, into the Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode 1?
I'm ready. And I must point out that you were part of your clownery leading up to this weekend, talking about how Falcon and Winter Soldier episode 1 was just going to demolish Zack Snyder's Justice League. Not only in
I believe the quote was that the Snyder cut would come out on Thursday, and that Falcon and Winter Soldier would come out on Friday, and everyone would forget about the Snyder cut.
Oh my gosh, that's just so funny because not only is the Justice League great, and I mean I preferred that of course to one episode of television, but like no one's really talking about Falcon and Winter Soldier. I mean, there's been some tweets and memes and whatnot, but like I feel like at least most of what I've seen on the timeline and trending is Justice League memes and reactions. So hey, this is just going to be a buffet, this episode of eating words, Zach. So buckle up. But this first episode, Falcon Winter Soldier, it was entitled New World Order, right?
That is correct, yeah.
And that's kind of an allusion to the antagonists that they're kind of setting up, it seems, but also referring to the post-blip world,
right?
That Sam and Bucky are kind of grappling with. Sam Wilson allies himself with Bucky Barnes to embark on a series of international adventures. The duo draw together by their ties to Steve Rogers to thwart the activities of the Flag Smashers, an anti-patriotism terrorist cell.
So that was the description for the first episode, according to Rotten Tomatoes. But that's very just a general. This is the show. This is the show.
Yeah, this is the log line for the show, and that's. I mean, at the end of the first episode, I think that's basically what you can garner from what we get set up with. But this particular episode is much more. It's more low key. It's more slowly paced.
Low key.
It's low key. Speaking of which, we did get
a poster.
A cool little poster. The date is confirmed already. We know it's coming out in June. So look forward to that. But New World Order. It takes place. So this takes place. How many months? It's like 6, I think.
I think it was 3.
Okay, so it's not even that far. I think it's after Endgame, of course. And again, the blip is still something that people are adjusting to, reeling from. Some dealing with it better than others, I'm sure. And although this is a slower paced episode, right off the bat, we get a kind of Winter Soldier, like Civil War style action scene. Of course, it's focused on Sam Falcon. He has a new suit, a little bit new design, straight out of the comics. I love it. I think it's the best design that he's gotten so far. Zach, did you notice that, or what'd you think?
I'm not gonna lie, I did not notice that. I thought he looked pretty standard. But this, I will say, this was, suit aside, this whole opening set piece was like the most badass, like most exciting action that we've seen from the Falcon in general, like ever. You know, he's always been kind of that on the back burner, playing second fiddle to Cap or to Winter Soldier or anybody really, that he's never really been in the spotlight. But he was front and center. Obviously, he's the titular Falcon, and did not disappoint in just like the magnitude, the scale of the skydiving, helicopter chase, wingsuits. That it was just absolutely. I had made the comparison between this and like a Fast and the Furious or Hobbs and Shaw, and saying that I thought this was going to be much more of that style of just like turn your brain off and watch some crazy stuff happen. And like 2 minutes into this show, I was like, hell yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And then it like very much took a turn to just not that whatsoever.
Yeah, I echo all of that. I thought it was a very, very solid action scene, especially to open up. Falcon, again, very badass, very cool, very much feels like his own guy, a capable, badass superhero on his own, not a sidekick or, just kind of tertiary member of the Avengers. At this point, he's very well established and can handle his own stuff. The mission ends on a high note, and then that's where afterwards, I did the tweet earlier in the week after I saw the episode and gave mostly positive feelings and a couple cons, but the cut from a perfectly colored like outdoor area to yellow orange Tunisia was so like jarring visually. But basically that's where in that one scene where he's kind of working on I think it was a Red Wing, his little kind of drone or something related to his equipment. the sidekick. He feels like a sidekick, at least he's in touch with Sam, and they're having like a little discussion. I did not like this character, I gotta say. I didn't mention it in my tweet, but that was one of my grading.
The like CIA guy or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah,
what
the
his
CIA guy.
organization
He was annoying. The acting was not good, I felt. And yeah, I was just like, oh.
I will say it's a cardinal sin to do #important in a text message. So he's got an X in my book as well. So
okay, well, I'm glad we can agree on that. But he was the one who was. I think part of it is that he gets stuck delivering a good amount of exposition this episode as well.
Because he's in charge of basically laying out what the flag smashers are and doing all the heavy lifting.
Exactly. So flag smashers, they're basically almost like anti-nationalists. Like they are trying to get rid of borders, and I guess during the blip, or during the in between the snap and the blip, of course, there's that 5-year period, and governments basically fell into nothingness by what Endgame said, at least, and kind of that's what is alluded to here. And it was just a complete, new world order. It was a very much different from anything we could probably imagine. And they want to now in the world after the blip, I guess governments have been reestablished, of course, and all that. But this group wants to go back to the way it was, and they want to erase those borders and whatnot. And I think that was something else I said in my tweet. And I'm skeptical of like this entire, I guess, concept, or like what, because, and I think it's funny because this has all kind of been discussed lately, talking about the military, like being in the Marvel movies and the shows and whatnot, and like talking about, I mean, all these movies, especially the Russo brothers ones, particularly the first two with the Captain America, like, centered ones, they're very like, they talk about them as like political thrillers, or like, they're very political. International espionage. And it's like, okay. And like, they are political. I mean, they have political, overtones, and it's talking about, oh, we have to sign this treaty and like all these other things, you know what I mean? It's different from, Justice League, I guess you could say. And I'm just curious, like, to like see where the politics of this show like go, because it's interesting. Like the notion that during that 5-year span, everything was just kind of like free flowing and, very much disorganized and not really structured by any sort of like government or anything is really interesting. And I'm again curious to see where they go. I'm just kind of, I hope it's done in a way that's like interesting and nuanced, rather than, oh, we got to stop these bad guys. You know what I mean? Because I think they did a pretty good job of that, like even in Civil War, with Zemo, I think that was his name, Daniel Bruhl's
who's in this.
Yeah, and we don't see him in this episode, but we know he's coming. And I thought they just did a good job in that one of being like, okay, this guy is a bad guy, he's a terrorist, et cetera. But this is his reasoning. You can see why he's doing what he's doing. So I just hope we see more of that. And of course, this episode kind of splits into these two different storylines.
Right, I was going to ask you about that. With it being titled Falcon and the Winter Soldier, this is very much Falcon
and
on one side, and then the Winter Soldier on the other, with basically, like you said, two separate storylines. Sam on one side, Bucky on the other, both figuring out how to live without Steve Rogers, without Cap, and how to do their own thing.
Yeah.
Sam has decided not to pick up the mantle, not to use the shield. He's donated it to the Smithsonian at their urgings for what he thinks will be an exhibit. More on that later. And so he's basically, we get to see him in his element at home, returning to Louisiana, I believe, with his family, his sister, his nephews, and basically how they're making do now post blip. They've all been struggling here for 5 years. Falcon, of course, was blipped away. He was dusted. And so he's just kind of gotten back, and he's not really hip to what's going on, how things have worked. And he just thinks that everything can be fixed with a snap. But instead, that is not the case for his sister and their financial woes. She's made some tough decisions in the past 5 years about like getting rid of their family boat or trying to just make ends meet, basically. And then on the other side, you've got Bucky, we find out he's been in therapy. He's trying to maintain his good streak of not Winter Soldiering people. And instead, he has like a set of rules that he has to follow of no violence, no hurting people. And basically, I can't remember there were 3, I believe. But he's like loosely following them to basically try to make amends, whether it's by helping the people, the like relatives of his victims as the Winter Soldier, or by bringing the Hydra people who are still at large, bringing them into custody. So what did you think of just like the split here? Obviously we're going to get them together at some point, but kind of establishing them each on their own. What did you think of the individual storylines? I want to dive into those.
Yeah. I liked how they did it, because I think it was a nice way of kind of, first off, setting them up equally, kind of giving them equal treatment, equal time, not trying to just automatically throwing them in together and then kind of having to find that balance when they're in the same exact place during the same kind of scene. Because we know that, again, they're going to be teaming up. It's going to be kind of like almost like a buddy cop sort of situation the rest of the series. I really liked the Sam plotline, because first off, I didn't expect him to do what he did with the whole Cap Shield Smithsonian thing. I mean, it makes sense for the character. We already saw that he had doubt at the end of Endgame, so it's kind of following that up. We also got a cool scene between him and Rhodes, which was nice to see him already pop up in the first episode. I'm sure it won't be the
massive cameos.
So that was nice. I think that they did a good job kind of setting up where he's at mentally. And then, of course, getting to see in Louisiana, where it's, getting more of his backstory, getting more of where he comes from, what his, family's like, what, even though he was gone during the blip, the people he left behind, because he doesn't have like a wife, he doesn't have kids, but he does have a sister and he does have nephews, that he loves and cares about. And he mentions that they were just babies when he last saw them, and now they're kind of, getting older, and they're, it's just a completely like different situation. And I also mentioned in my tweet that 2 of the biggest highlights were, and I apologize in advance if I mispronounce these names, but Adipero Urie and who is the woman in Bucky's plotline, Miki Ishikawa. Those 2 I thought were the biggest and nicest surprises from the show, because I wasn't expecting, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, again, 2 characters we haven't seen in much backstory from outside of, Steve Rogers. All of a sudden we have these 2 very much primary women in the picture. And they're, serving different kind of roles, and they're different sorts of characters. Sarah, Sam's sister, she's been holding it down. Like while he was gone, like in between Snap and Blip, she, had to take care of like all the family business, the boat that they own. And it's kind of alluded to that their parents, they like had like some financial hardships, and then they've kind of inherited those. Part of the episode is them like trying to get a loan. It's like, it's very much grounded stuff that we like trying to get a loan. I don't know if that's something that's come up in any of the other Avengers movies.
It's also something that like, it's nobody ever really thought about that before. Like, obviously you've got your Tony Stark, you're someone who's like a billionaire, but then like, how are these other folks making ends meet? Like, do they need to be paid if they're just out like saving the world all the time, or like what? But to think that it's really funny. It's funny, but like sad the way that the banker is like, oh yeah, you're Falcon. Okay, let's take a selfie. Can we do this? Can we do that? Oh wait, no, you can't have this loan. Can we get another selfie? Like, I saw a tweet that was like, it's hilarious, but like startlingly realistic that that the Avengers need to start a GoFundMe to buy a house. Like, that seems very like the way that America is right now.
Yeah, well, I think even like, again, yeah, you can definitely make those real world comparisons. I mean, you have, these very important people, the Avengers out there serving, the country, serving the world, protecting it, doing all these things. And then, over the last year, especially with the pandemic, you have all these frontline personnel and workers in the United States who are like, at no stage of the pandemic have they been given like a break. Like, they've had to be out there, masked up, putting themselves like at risk. They're putting their health at risk, putting their families at risk, and all that. And again, they're making minimum wage. They're barely able to make ends meet. It is startling and I think timely for sure. And on the other, speaking of timely, on the flip side of that, with Bucky in his storyline, I was talking about Miki Ishikawa. She plays like a bartender. And I think Bucky, it's not really clear. He's living in, I think, DC, because he's kind of close to, because again, he does have to go see that therapist, and the government's kind of keeping tabs on him. But he goes to this bar, and he meets her, and one of the people on his list is this older man, this older Asian man, and it's revealed through a flashback that Bucky basically killed this guy on a mission. And so he's having this discussion. I guess he's been meeting with this older gentleman for a while now and gotten to know him, and he's listened as this guy has told him about his son and what it was like losing him, and like the whole process of like grieving and whatnot. And of course, like, this comes the same week that we have like this horrible tragedy and massacre happening in Atlanta against members of the Asian community. And it's just like, I mean, the timing, it's just like, it's sad and, hard to believe. But I just found that to be pretty interesting, like pretty engaging. And I liked especially how, Bucky feels like all this remorse. He's having these nightmares, because the flashback actually occurs through a nightmare that we get to see when he kills this man's son. And then later on, he's at the bar, and then he's kind of being triggered by these different, these comments that the bartender makes, and her name is Leia. And he goes to the older man's apartment, and goes to see him, and he opens the door, and then you can see there's this little, part of the apartment is kind of cornered off, and there's a picture of his son, and there's, candles burning, and it's like
a shrine, basically.
Yeah, he's like, memorializing him. And Bucky's, he has this huge list. And it's like, how could he possibly, he can't fix it really, because he can't bring these people back that he's killed. But even then, how can he possibly, I mean, this is like such an emotionally like taxing like process, do you imagine? And again, it's hard for him to like break into the real world, because even, I think there's this cute scene where they're on this date, him and the bartender, Leia, and they're playing Battleship, and they're kind of like asking each other like questions like in between, and just kind of like figuring it out. I don't know. Again, this is like the slower parts of the episode. You weren't really expecting that. What did you think of like the date scene, or the things, the conversations between Sam, like his sister, and I don't know, were you kind of keen on those, or?
I mean, like I said, I wasn't like crazy high about this episode, but I still found it entertaining and good, and I'm excited about where it's going to go. It just wasn't really what I was expecting with those like Fast and the Furious type comments, but this, like I said, this is all stuff that I'd never really thought about, and so I think it's interesting that Marvel is willing to, when they do have a 6-episode show, or like a WandaVision, a 9-episode show, and they do have that extra time where it's not, okay, we just have to go from one big explosion to the other, that they are taking the time to really like go into those more personal, emotional stuff, especially with these characters that we aren't as familiar with. So I'm excited. Like I enjoyed all of those. with Bucky and Sam.
Right.
And I'm excited to see more of that, as well as kind of like the other stuff that I was kind of expecting, what we think is actually going to happen.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And I think, well, of course, I think we also have to talk about real quick where this episode leaves us at.
Yes, the big reveal.
It is a bit of a big reveal. It's kind of like not a twist necessarily, but more of a surprise ending. Because I don't know when I expected this to come up. And I guess
we all knew it was going to happen because of the teasers, but
I
we
think
didn't know how.
I guess I was so wrapped up in kind of the drama of the episode that was going on with Sam and his family and then Bucky. It just slipped my mind, and I guess I wasn't thinking maybe they will bring that up now, but we do get the reveal at the end. Sam, his sister Sarah comes in. She's like, she puts it on the television, and it's this announcement. And the same guy who was telling Sam earlier in the episode, hey, what you're doing is great. Giving the shield up and turning it in and letting us, take care of it from here. Blah blah blah. Giving him all this lip service, and then turns around on national television, says, hey, we need Captain America. We need someone to take up the mantle. And then he marches out this fucking white guy in a costume with the shield. It's not at the Smithsonian. We know his name is John Walker. He's played by Wyatt Russell, which is, of course, Kurt Russell's son.
Great performance in 22 Jump Street.
And he comes out and he just has like this shit-eating grin on his face. And Sam is just like, oh my god.
He even winks at the camera.
Literally, yeah. And it's great. I mean, I hate this guy already. And I'm excited to see where this plot line goes because I mean, I don't really know. What do you expect to happen with that character?
I mean, obviously I feel like there's going to be some hard feelings between him and Sam, and we know based on teasers that Sam at some point will get the shield back because we see him throwing it into trees and everything.
Yeah, that's true.
And so but then we also see like this guy making appearances at like football games and pep rallies and stuff. So I don't know if this is going to be more of if they're going to try and be like, Sam, you got to go do the heavy lifting. This guy's just going to be our mascot. And then they could go into some interesting stuff there with like, I don't know if they would go into like race and just like if they're like Sam, but if they're like, I don't know how deep they will, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, go because they could go like really into it and be like, okay, Sam, you're going to be the one who's actually doing this stuff, but we're going to give this white guy all the credit and make him the figurehead, which could be like really interesting. And that's not something you necessarily expect from Marvel. So if they do that, more power to them. I think that would be awesome to really like dive into how that affects, I don't know, just like society. I mean, that's, in the words of Joker, we live in a society.
Right? Yeah. So no, I mean, those are great points. I hadn't even considered that. Whether or not they are smart enough or bold enough.
Because do we know if John Walker has been injected with the super serum? Does he have any of these powers, or is he just the figurehead? I know like comics wise, there's like a whole background for who U.S. Agent is.
I think he has powers in the comics, but we don't know. I mean, they could change that. But yeah,
is it going to be like a Trevor Mandarin type thing that this guy's just a fraud?
Those thoughts in particular, I'm excited to see again where they take it because it could be very interesting. They just got to be bold. They just got to no BSing. But again, I liked the episode a good amount. Liked it more than you did, and I think they've set a solid foundation to go from here.
Yeah, and I will say one thing that we're going to try to do, and I would suggest everyone else too, is to, even though we've already seen it, the headlines from all the sites saying 5 ways how Falcon and the Winter Soldier can introduce the X-Men into the MCU. Let's not put those high expectations, whether it's Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie not doing it themselves or us or other people. Let's just go with it and not go into any of the, oh my God, this has to mean Reed Richards is around the corner.
Right.
Let's just enjoy it for what it is and not let theorizing ruin it, because that definitely happened to some extent with WandaVision.
Yeah. Fair play. So that pretty much covers Falcon Winter Soldier. You want to jump into this week's news, Zach?
Let's do it. So this we recorded on Sunday last week. Oscars came out Monday morning. That's bad on us. We should have just waited. But we got to touch on it. At this point, we're a week removed, so we're not going to spend too much time on it. But Johnny, for Oscar nominations, initial reactions, anything that we don't have to go through it all, but just what made you happy, what made you sad, anything that really stood out?
Okay, so off the top, of course, I think anyone who's been following me knows Judas and the Black Messiah has been my top film, my favorite film of the last year or so, and it overperformed, and I was so happy. I was worried. I thought maybe it would just be I thought worst case scenario, Daniel Kaluuya gets nominated, of course. He's like the front runner and supporting actor, and then they sneak in for like a Best Picture nom. But they got both of those, plus Lakeith Stanfield in supporting actor, which is, of course, is kind of hilarious, kind of like bizarre, because he was campaigned as the lead. And I think the argument is very solid in that he's the lead. He has more screen time than Kaluuya. He's the titular Judas, of course. And yeah, I mean, they can vote for whoever they want. There's no, real rule about it. So, hey, I think Stanfield on social media as well said, hey, I'm confused.
I don't get it either, or whatever, something like that.
But fuck it. So I'm super happy. I mean, he deserves it. He's been one of the best for a few years now. And, God, I'm just so happy that he got it. I mean, I was shook. Like, I was so shook when I got that news. And then it also snuck in for cinematography. Sean Bobbitt got his first Oscar nomination, more than deserving, and original screenplay nomination as well, which thankfully got Shaka King his Oscar nomination because he was not nominated for director. And then, of course, he also got nominated as a producer on this. Him, Charles D. King, and Ryan Coogler, which is the first all-black team of producers ever nominated for Best Picture, which is very, very depressing as
New
a fact.
Academy, baby.
But also, I mean, it's progress in some regard and exciting for them. So that's a record that's going to be there for hopefully not 93 more years. But of course, also they broke the record set by The Color Purple, which was for the most black nominees for any one film in Oscar history, which is, again, kind of nuts. I mean, Color Purple came out, decades ago at this point. I think all around, I was very excited about that. I was also very excited. Paul Rossi got in for Sound of Metal. I thought he was, I think apart from Daniel Kaluuya, he was my favorite supporting actor performance of the year. I know you quite like Sound of Metal as well. I don't know. But he was fantastic. He's like a very small name actor. So I think it was great that he got some recognition, and really just overall Sound of Metal, Nomadland, Judas, and The Father, which has been very much under people's radar just because no one's really been able to see it, unfortunately.
That comes out here soon on VOD, right? Or is it already out?
It's out in theaters right now, but I don't think it's on VOD yet. But highly recommend checking that out when you get a chance. But yeah, basically my 4 favorite films that were eligible for Oscars all got, half a dozen Oscar noms each. So I was stoked about it, really stoked, especially The Father getting in for film editing and production design. Not going to spoil anything for that movie because everyone should go out and check it. But by far, some of the most impressive stuff that I've seen of the last few years. So excited. But there is some bad news as well, Zach. What was that? I think something that everyone was pretty much in agreement that there was.
Well, first of all, the fact that Mank got like 8 nominations. But I think that's interesting. That's not what you're referring to. But I just wanted to point out that Mank has like 7 or 8 nominations, and it could go a clean sweep of 0.
Yeah, if we're lucky.
If we're lucky. But the real bad news is The Five Bloods. The fact that the cowards in the Academy did not nominate Delroy Lindo, who delivered one of the best. Whether you want to go supporting or lead, I believe he was campaigned as lead. But either way, regardless of category, one of the best all-out performances of the last year. No just question. An absolute sin not to nominate him in any capacity. And then the movie itself did not get nominated for Best Picture. No love for Spike as Best Director, correct?
Nope.
So tough go for The Five Bloods.
Well, I will say they did get one nomination.
Screenplay, right?
It was Terrence Blanchard for original score.
Score.
Which Blanchard, he's a great composer. He worked on Black Klansman as well, but yeah, so they didn't go home empty-handed, but yeah, pretty big misses. And I mean, Delroy Lindo, I think everyone would agree on that, even if you're not even a fan of that movie necessarily. The dude was a powerhouse. So I mean, the fact that Gary Oldman got in over this guy, like it's pathetic. But yeah, I think overall one of the absolute best fields of nominees that I can remember since I've been like following this stuff. So a lot of pleasant surprises, and I think despite some of the sadder misses and snubs, I think it was a good history making batch.
Another quick shout out, the double female best director nominees,
Yes,
with Chloe Zhao and Emerald Fennell for Promising Young Woman. So that's the first time that had ever happened.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Chloe Zhao in particular, I mean, she's looking to take home 3 or 4 Oscars. It's looking pretty likely. So that's going to be, I think no matter what happens, history is going to be getting made next month when the ceremony actually goes down.
One final, just not a yay or nay, but just an interesting piece. It's like, without having like a Marvel movie or a Star Wars or a Avatar, like any of those big things. It's funny seeing the visual effects category. Love and Monsters, Midnight Sky, Mulan, The One and Only Ivan, and Tenet. Like, honestly, Tenet should sweep with that,
Tenet
like run away with that.
Right?
But the other ones, I've heard that Midnight Sky is actually the favorite there.
There's no way.
But just like not usually, that's where
terrible.
Usually like there and like costume or something is like where you see like your blockbusters kind of sneak in. But since there weren't really any like blockbusters, just kind of a weird year, as we all know. But
right. Absolutely.
We didn't even get like a Birds of Prey or something come in at costume design.
Didn't.
So
I was a bit surprised by that.
As was I. But that's enough Oscars talk. Let's get into the rest of the news. And this is a very topical discussion here, since we're talking about a director's cut of a movie today. In the spirit of long lost director's cuts, breaking news out of 1993. Chris Columbus has revealed that an R-rated version of the beloved 1993 comedy Miss Doubtfire does in fact exist. That I don't know. Have you seen Miss Doubtfire, Johnny?
I have. I mean, that was growing up. I mean, that was a VHS tape that I had.
Okay.
I had it on a lot. I liked it.
Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, iconic Robin Williams classic, but apparently he was improvising so much that there are PG versions, PG-13R, and NC-17 cuts of the film. Despite the original version is rated PG-13, so I think at this point we just need Chris Columbus release the Columbus cut and show us NC-17 Euphegina Doubtfire.
Yeah. Hey, more power to him. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing that. So.
Unlock the vault. Give us more Robin Williams. I want to ask you though, I don't know if you have anything. I can't off the top of my head. Is there some mystical director's cut that doesn't even have to exist, but if you could make one exist out of nowhere, is there something that you would like to see?
No.
Like a 4-hour Blade Runner 2049.
Well, see, that's the thing. Like, I know there was like an assembly cut, is going to be like about 4 hours anyway, with just all the footage that you actually, had in the shooting script and you filmed it, etc. And Denis Villeneuve has said there was a 4-hour cut, of course, when they originally put everything together. But he says the cut that went to theaters, the cut that everyone can watch right now at home, that is his cut. Like, that's the director's cut. That's the best version of the movie that he thinks, and that's what they went with. But hey, I would be totally down to watch an hour and 15 more minutes of that world. Like, I don't care if it slows down the plot, if it doesn't really matter that much. I just like seeing more, of those characters, more environments, more, music. Like the Blade Runner world, I just am a big fan of course, in that movie in particular. But yeah, I mean, I would sit down. I would definitely throw that on.
Yeah, I don't know if I have one. Like I said, I have never really been I've always been one of those people who's just like, okay, that was it. I don't need to. If that's what they came out with, then that's what they came out with. I know we've bashed on the Snyder crew for a while about just like being unsatisfied with what happened. And obviously we were wrong in that case, but in general, the Last Jedi people that hate that movie, you know, if you hate
I don't think a longer
but you
cut.
don't need to beg for something new. So I'm fine with everything that I've seen.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
All right, next piece of news. Our boy, Jake Gyllenhaal. What's going on? MGM is in negotiations to acquire Combat Control, starring Gyllenhaal and directed by Sam Hargrave, who did Extraction last year on Netflix. The film will follow the story of American war veteran John Chapman, who died in battle during the war in Afghanistan. And basically, there were no eyewitnesses to what he did, to his top secret work. And so someone in the Air Force, Captain Cora Alexander, was tasked with the nearly impossible task of investigating what happened to Chapman and proving that he was a worthy recipient of the Medal of Honor. So this kind of sounds like a American Sniper-esque, maybe a little more like muddled than that. This seems like less straightforward. But Jake Gyllenhaal, first movie since Spider-Man Far From Home.
Spider-Man Far From Home. Yep.
And even before, like, he had an incredible run, and then has kind of like not fallen off, but like stopped doing all his crazy weird stuff.
Or has he?
Or has he? What are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts are, I haven't seen Extraction. Don't really care to.
Definitely some cool action in that, but you know, this doesn't sound like an action-packed, like,
it doesn't
shoot 'em up kind of thing.
Which is an interesting part of it. I don't know, Jakey boy. I really, I don't know, man. I'm just like, we've seen him in Nightcrawler, we've seen him in Prisoners, we've seen him in Zodiac. The guy can act his ass off. Like
Okja, great character in Okja.
Yeah, I mean, he has range. He's got ability. We've seen him in Nocturnal Animals. Enemy. The guy can do it all, pretty much. So I'm just like, hey, I respect the hustle. If you want to go out there, chase your bag, do it. But as a fan, being selfish and loving him as an actor, I want to see him in like the high, intense, roles in films, working with like great auteurs and prestige filmmakers that are going to push him to his limit and give him like material that's really he can sink his teeth into. Hey, Bradley Cooper got a nomination for American Sniper. Maybe Jake Gyllenhaal could get one for this, but I don't care about this project. Just hearing, based on what we have here. And yeah, he's been missing for a while now. I think,
get him back with Denny. Get him on the Sun. Let's go to HBO and let's get this shit on track.
But yeah, I don't know. He can, he's got this. He's got like, he's making a movie with Michael Bay right now. He's got a video game movie next up, by the same director who did Skyscraper. So, I'd like Jake Gyllenhaal. I'd like his filmography to look closer to Ryan Gosling's than The Rock's. Let me just say that.
He is the voice in the movie Spirit Untamed, which is an animated movie from DreamWorks about the horse Spirit. That sounds like a big role for him.
Wow. I'm moved.
Yeah, I don't know what to think of this. I'm just really waiting for the Sun to get Jake back on track. Hopefully he's like, oh, I'm working with Denny again. Let's just get back in the swing of things. Maybe go make some more movies together. So we'll see. Yeah. We'll see what happens. But some more casting news here. Danny Radcliffe, old Harry Potter, going to the dark side, playing a villain in Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum's The Lost City of D. Great name there. Wasn't there already a Lost City of Z movie, I believe?
Yes, there is. But
this film follows a reclusive romance novelist played by Sandra Bullock who was sure nothing could be worse than getting stuck on a book tour with her cover model, Channing Tatum, until a kidnapping attempt sweeps them both into a cutthroat jungle adventure, proving life can be so much stranger and more romantic than any of her paperback fictions. So basically, this sounds like you're in line at the grocery store and you see that book with the shirtless man with the abs.
Yeah.
That's what Sandy B is writing up. Channing Tatum's the model, and for some reason they're on a press tour together. But I don't know. I like Channing Tatum. I like Sandra Bullock. Daniel Radcliffe, love him as Harry Potter. Mixed on him as anything else. But this sounds sort of like Long Shot, of just like the odd couple being paired together, like on a press route, whether it's politics or books. But I love Long Shot, so I'd be interested to see how this plays out.
Well, you say odd couple, but Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum are both attractive people.
Right. It's not like Sandra Bullock is a Seth Rogen. I mean, Seth Rogen's a good-looking dude in his own way. Like, he's a charming dude. But it's not like this is some Channing Tatum. Like, they're just going to put glasses on Sandra Bullock and make her a nerd or something that Channing Tatum overlooks her, or what?
Also, why a cover model? Why the hell would he be on the book tour?
I know that's more of the odd couple.
That's the
it's
dumbest
like, why
thing
are you
I've ever heard.
Like,
I guess they must really sell the book, huh?
I guess so. Maybe he
Also,
stands outside shirtless. He stands outside of Barnes and Noble shirtless to get people to come into the signing event or whatever.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right, that's enough of that.
I'm interested to see it. I will see how it goes along. I think
I did like the long
sounds. Yes, I loved Long Shot, but Long Shot was also very like grounded in reality versus this, which sounds like it could get like way out there with a cutthroat jungle adventure. And I feel like that's where this could go downhill if it is too ridiculous.
Yeah, agreed. But the last couple bits we got here are just some dates shifting around for some upcoming movies we are looking forward to. In the Heights, got a batch of some pretty awesome posters, Zach. I don't know if you got to see all of them, but they spared no expense and got us a solid amount of posters. HBO Max, I know this is going to be HBO Max, Warner Brothers kind of dual hybrid release. Hey, they're killing it in the poster game. They already had the market cornered with Godzilla vs. Kong. It's like a brand new poster every day from them, and they're all badass. In the Heights got some beautiful new posters as well. And then 2 trailers, not just one. HBO Max dropped 2. And on top of that, we find out that they are moving it up a week from June 18th to June 11th. Super excited about that. June 18th, they had shared that date with Pixar's Luca, but now they have June 11th all to themselves, so that will give them a better chance at success. And I'm excited to check it out. Like, it looks like a very fun, very summery, musical kind of event. So I don't know if you're familiar with In the Heights.
I don't really know the music. I mean, I know of it. I don't really know the music or anything. Okay. I think I've said it on the pod before that it might have been back when Jake and I talked Hamilton, but
yeah,
I'm not really like, I like musicals, but I'm not a person who listens to the soundtrack unless I have seen it. So like,
okay, gotcha.
After I saw like Waitress on Broadway, I'm like all in on that. After I saw Wicked, I'm all in. Okay. Hamilton the same, but I hadn't listened to Hamilton at all until I saw it on Disney Plus. So like I have not listened to In the Heights, but I know like obviously we saw Anthony Ramos in Hamilton. We've seen him in A Star Is Born. I like him.
He's great.
Don't really know anything about anybody else in this movie other than Lin, but I mean if he did it, as much as people like to hate on him, you can't hate on what he produces. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. I think just getting back in the theater, this will be more and more people will be vaccinated by this point, and I think it could be a fun event. On top of that, though, we got a little bit of more negative news. Venom: Let There Be Carnage is moving back 3 months from June 18th to September 17th. And actually, no, it was slated for June 25th, and it's getting moved back to September 17th. I think it was on the same date. It ended up being on the same date as F9, Fast and Furious film, because that got delayed about a month. So of course, Venom is packing up and moving away, so they don't have to go head to head with a very popular and very established franchise in the Fast and Furious saga. So
I know this is a tough break for you though.
it puts
in the
it puts me in a
Dune
position
world.
Yeah. So basically, for anyone who doesn't know, I tweeted a little bit about it. It seems that Dune is going to get a kind of staggered release. It's not going to be day and date because we all know, of course, in the United States, domestically, it's going to be released on HBO Max and in theaters on October 1st. But a lot of other nations and territories have started to date it and have updated their release. It's going to be September 15th, September 16th, or September 17th. So about a couple weeks before we get it in the US. But now, Venom worldwide, presumably on September 17th. That's going to seemingly go head to head with Dune in a lot of locations, some huge markets, contending for IMAX screens, contending for Dolby, contending, for, just auditoriums at any given theater. And of course, Venom, the original, made like $800 million, was a huge smash hit despite not getting like a great critical reception. So yeah, I'm nervous. I'm not pleased with this news. And of course, with Dune coming out domestically on October 1st, you got this a couple weeks prior, and then a week after October 1st, you have No Time to Die releasing. So I don't know. I don't know if they're
stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, I don't know
if only The Rock was in one of these movies, that would make for a good joke.
Yeah, and then the other movie would be A Quiet Place, and we could say it's stuck between a rock and A Quiet Place. But I think, this sucks. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if they're just going to stick to their guns and be like, hey, we got a great movie. We trust people to pick it over these other movies. Maybe they'll move it up. Maybe they'll move it back. I don't really know. I just think so much is riding on Dune from so many different perspectives. I just think that they would be willing to take some action here. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a fanboy.
I don't know. You're more of a consultant. I feel like Denny should reach out and get your thoughts. But
His
we'll
wife.
have to see.
Tanya,
tell Tanya you'd like a word.
The executive producer is probably scoping out my tweets for advice. Not really. She's more than capable of making her own decisions. So, Tanya, if you're listening, hi. Thanks for all the support. But moving along to our main event of the evening.
It's time.
It's time. Zack Snyder's Justice League, baby.
I had a dream. Almost like a premonition. I think there's an attack coming.
My lord, this world will fall.
I need warriors. I'm building an alliance to defend ourselves.
How do you know your team's strong enough? If you can't bring down the charging bull, then don't wave the red cape at it.
You were sent here for a reason. And even if it takes you the rest of your life, find out what that reason is.
They said the age of heroes would never come again.
It will. It has to.
Years in the making, quite literally. It's been because I texted this to you, Zach, last night when I was watching it with my girlfriend, that I kind of had to pause it and give her like a mini crash course in the history of this production. Because I mentioned that they had filmed this in like 2017 or 2016, and she was like, "Wait, what?" And then from there, but yeah, it's been years in the making. We all know what happened with Justice League. He got, basically Zack Snyder had to leave because of a family tragedy. His daughter Autumn, was battling depression, ended up, passing away from suicide, and then you have Joss Whedon kind of implanted into the production. He takes out a bunch of stuff. He writes a bunch of new stuff.
80 pages.
Yeah, re-edits the film, throws it into theaters, and nobody won with that decision because it had a horrible critical reception. It had a mediocre fan reception. Zack Snyder fans and DC fans in particular were hated it, and it bombed. It was a huge bomb. It cost like $300+ million to make and only made like 600 something. And in the years since, because it's been 3.5 years now, Zack Snyder, his fans, cast and crew of the film, including the major Justice League members, have all thrown their weight behind it. They've said release the Snyder cut. We deserve to have this put out. We deserve to have it finished. Zack Snyder's name was still attached to Justice League. I think that's the most messed up thing about that. And I know that there's rules regarding the Directors Guild and like all these, this association, all these other things. But the fact that he had to have his name attached to that when it was so clearly bastardized and just like mutilated into something that was not even resembling a Zack Snyder movie. And whether or not you're a fan of Zack Snyder, whether or not you respect him as a filmmaker, etc., when you see a Zack Snyder movie, that you cannot debate that. And that movie did not feel like a Zack Snyder movie, didn't look like a Zack Snyder movie. What we finally got, it was announced last year. It didn't seem like it would ever happen, but now it is out. They went all out with the marketing as well. I was pretty impressed. Along the way, I had plenty of doubts. Zach, I think you had plenty of doubts too.
And they are on the record, baby.
They're on the record. There's no erasing that. But yeah, so along the way with the trailers and the posters and all the marketing, I've been, skeptical. I've been critical. But all that matters in the end is the final product. And I'm happy to say this is Zack Snyder's most successful, most highly positive received film of all time, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot comment beyond the DC films. I haven't seen 300. I haven't seen Dawn of the Dead. That's the other one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I can't talk about those, but I mean, this is very much deserving to be the best from DC, whether it's Man of Steel or BVS or the original. This is the one. It lived up to the hype or the anti-hype, whatever side you were on. I was very pleased to be proven wrong about this, and I'm not afraid to admit it. I think 4 hours was a long time, but that was, if anything, that was my only criticism. I feel like that, like, if you're one of those fans who has been clamoring for this for 3.5 years, like 4 hours was never enough.
Oh, absolutely.
You want like how you were just saying about Blade Runner 2049, you just want to see more of that world, Exactly. Then, okay, they don't care if there's, I meant to write it down while I was watching, but there were like a couple scenes where I'm like, yeah, that wasn't really necessary, but I get it that you wanted to just include it all in here.
Yeah. So
you could trim this down to 3.5 probably and still have it be like really great and a little tighter, obviously. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to complain about all that. I liked the way they did it. I want to ask, did you do it you said the first time you did it, you kind of went on and off. I did chapters as well. I did like the prologue and chapter 1, and then later in the day, basically all the rest of it. Did you do that the second time around as well, or did you go all the way through?
No. So yeah, that rewatch. And really the main reason, I did kind of throw it on because I threw it on almost like casually that first time, the first day it was out on Thursday. Just because like I wasn't that excited for it. I was like, again, very skeptical, not sure what it was going to end up being like. And the more I came back to it, I stopped and started it. And the more that it went on, and the more I came back to it, I was like, wow, okay, like I'm actually like invested, like I'm engaged with this. I think it's good. Like this is actually pretty damn good. And then by the end of it, when I finished it, 12 hours after I had started it, with all the breaks and whatnot, I was like, okay, that was great. Like, holy, like I need to rewatch it to like, make sure that it's not just like some sort of hype kind of like clouding my mind or, sitting, I think watching it all, but in a tighter sitting as well kind of makes a difference. So yeah, rewatching it, I appreciate it even more. I liked things more. I was more forgiving of like things that I might have been critical of. And the length, didn't really bother me that much. I mean, it's kind of like watching a mini series almost. It does break up into those parts, but I just chugged right along. And I think that really and I'm glad I got to do that before we did this, because I feel confident in anything that I kind of say now.
So let's give the rundown before we dive too deep. Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, Ray Fisher, Ezra Miller, Henry Cavill, Amy Adams, etc., J.K. Simmons, throw them in there. It's all the characters that you've seen from the past movies, plus the newbies, whether that's Ray Fisher as Cyborg, Ezra Miller as the Flash. Two characters that incredibly different movies for them, and we'll get into that. But like you were mentioning of all the reception here, Rotten Tomatoes has it at a 74%. Audience score is 96%. Johnny, where are you coming in here?
I'm coming in hot, Zach, with a 85 out of 100.
I'm not far behind. I'm an 82. I gave it 4 stars. Very, very pleased with this. Let's run down the plot. In Zack Snyder's Justice League, determined to ensure Superman's ultimate sacrifice was not in vain, Bruce Wayne aligns forces with Diana Prince with plans to recruit a team of metahumans to protect the world from an approaching threat of catastrophic proportions. The task proves more difficult than Bruce imagined, as each of the recruits must face the demons of their own pasts to transcend that which has held them back, allowing them to come together, finally forming an unprecedented league of heroes, a Justice League, if you will. Now united, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Cyborg, and the Flash may be too late to save the planet from Steppenwolf, Desaad, and Darkseid and their dreadful intentions. So basically what we saw in the Justice League, but way more in-depth, didn't even have Darkseid except for Darkseid. That was the only mention in Justice League, whereas now Steppenwolf was basically... This gave me very much...
Steppenwolf was so much better in this movie. I got to say that.
Yes, he himself was better, but also just like this very much gave me like Thanos in Avengers or Age of Ultron or something. Like Steppenwolf was Loki basically, of like doing the work for the greater villain, and like Darkseid, we got hints of him, and then eventually maybe a little bit, and that would be what was to come in the original plan for Justice League Part 2.
Yeah.
But really just across the board, way more in depth about everything. And what were your, I guess you did not do the rewatch of Justice League, but in general, from what you remember, what were your biggest, like, what stood out the most as just like the biggest positive change here?
Okay. The big, like one single big change?
All of them, but maybe... Obviously, there are a lot to get into, but what's the biggest if you had to pick one?
It's the characters. I mean, the characters are the most important part of really any good movie, I feel. And I think that we just got so much more from the characters, so much better development. And Cyborg in particular, I think it's safe to say, benefited by far the most, because Joss Whedon, you misogynist, racist man. He cut. I mean, Cyborg was basically eliminated from his version of the movie. Like he's in it. He has lines. He uses his technology to kind of help the plot along, but he's like not a character. He's like a cardboard cutout. His mother isn't even in the film at all. His father's barely in it. And honest to God, I couldn't even tell you. I'm like thinking about it now. I don't even remember what happens to his father in the original movie. Like,
I'm pretty sure he survives.
Yeah. So, and of course, that's again Joss Whedon, just like, and the studio execs, not only messing with the tone of the movie, but messing with like the message of the movie, and that his whole arc. But apart from Cyborg, Ezra Miller as the Flash, I thought he was all of the bad. Like I liked Ezra Miller as the Flash in the original cut as well, as much as like you could. But all of the bad jokes, all of like the more cringe, like kind of lame, like comedic beats from him, I thought were like absent in this. I thought the stuff in here was actually quite funny. I thought it was charming. And oh my God, there's some great Flash moments in this that, again, did not exist in the other one. Aquaman, largely the same. Wonder Woman, largely the same. I think they just have like the mythology expanded a little bit. You get more of the Amazons, and of course that's more like related to Wonder Woman. You get some more of Atlantis and the Atlantean mother box, which is more related to Aquaman, of course, as well. Volko as well, Willem Dafoe. I don't remember, was he in the
he was not in the original one.
And so so that's
basically in the original one, all you get is a quick flash to the stronghold of where the mother box is, and then Aquaman shows up there to try and fight Steppenwolf, but then he runs away with it. Yeah, and again, I feel like it needs to be said, this movie in the original cut, like, was so chopped up. And of course, when you have 4 hours, because a 4-hour movie was never going to be in theaters, like, let's be real. Right. We have no idea what a theatrical cut of this would have looked like. Maybe it'd be close to 3 hours, over 2.5. But I think there was so much that and again, this is like an ultimate cut, right? I mean, you said yourself, you kind of had some things that you kind of wrote down and said, okay, they could have gotten rid of this or cut this out. Wasn't totally necessary. And I agree, there's a good amount of stuff like that, and you could have gotten a tighter edit out of this. But I think because it's on HBO Max, because it's broken up into parts, you could throw everything in the kitchen sink into this and it works. And I think you can find some sort of enjoyment in it. But I think just the fact that so much of what was cut out of that original cut, I mean, you cut out great Wonder Woman like moments and lines. The Amazons were significantly cut out. That the Amazon action scene in the original cut was like nothing compared to the one in this one. Like, I thought it was so much more badass in this one. Like, I thought it was so much more enjoyable. It looked so much better. And of course, I'm referring to when Steppenwolf's trying to get the mother box and the Amazons. The whole temple falling into the ocean part was not. In like that original one.
And just like the keep away aspect of that, I thought was pretty neat. And then of course, just like I said, the people Joss Whedon cut out of his cut were largely like women, and like, you have Ryan Zhang as Ryan Choi, who is Adam in the comics. He was like a superhero. He did not exist in the original, in Joss Whedon's cut. Cyborg's mom, again, cut out of Joss Whedon's cut. Kiersey Clemens as Iris West, nowhere to be found in Joss Whedon's cut. Just like character after character eliminated, and they were integral to like establishing these characters, fleshing them out. So yeah, absolutely, I think that is by far the biggest thing. And then of course there are so many other like smaller elements that just all add up to making it that much better. Zach, what was there? Obviously, I'm sure you agree with the characters being more fleshed out, and that definitely benefits the film. Was there any other like major thing you kind of wanted to add on to that? Yeah, I mean, Cyborg and the Flash are obviously the two biggest. And just the fact that those two, I guess Aquaman hadn't been introduced either, since his movie was after the original Justice League. But that was my biggest issue with the Justice League, was just the fact that like when obviously you can't talk DC without comparing to Marvel, whether you want to or not. Like Avengers did it by doing all of the like laying out all the individuals, and then even if they didn't have their own individual movie, like introducing them in some capacity, like a Black Widow, before they all teamed up. Whereas the Justice League was like, here are 3 brand new characters that you have to learn and figure out who they are, and then we're going to try and team up in the same movie. And so this like obviously just let that develop over a longer period of time, show more in depth about who they are. Right. And the Cyborg was honestly the main character of this movie now. And it was so much better. Yeah. 100%. And you mentioned the Flash and Cyborg being the two biggest beneficiaries. Also, I got to mention even, I think Lois Lane, Amy Adams' inclusion is so much stronger and better here. She's not in it a ton. She doesn't have like a ton of lines or anything. but compared to what we got, I mean, I just saw a tweet that edited together there's a Martha, Kent, and Lois Lane scene in this movie, like a very distinct, like strong one. And then you have those two in another scene together in the Joss Whedon version. I mean, it's night and day, and it is horrific to see what he chose to do. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, oh my God, I can't believe Warner Brothers and Joss Whedon, like, oh my God, they messed this movie up so badly. But yeah, I think so. Those are the biggest things. Let's go through. How did you want to go? I mean, it's 4 hours of movie. So again, I think we're gonna tweet it out. We're not gonna be able to touch on every single thing, but off top, after getting that out of the way, what, I guess, other major things that either, because you've also just seen the Whedon version. I haven't seen it since theaters. So what stood out to you as being the other biggest improvements or things that you think benefited the movie the most, or kind of like brought your opinion up so much from what the original version was?
Yeah, I mean, I think that beyond the new characters, I thought the Batman himself was like way more fleshed out here. Like, obviously we had met him in BVS, but I really like was not a fan of Ben Affleck's Batman.
Okay.
But before this, he grew on me quite a bit during the Snyder cut. So I think that was definitely another big benefit. Do you want to just kind of go through the chapters, I guess?
Yeah, yeah. That'd be good.
So obviously we start off with the prologue, which is kind of like revisiting Superman's death, setting up what's to come, basically.
Yeah, because
any takeaways there? I mean, other than just like it laying the foundation.
Yeah, because the whole premise of why Steppenwolf and Darkseid's forces come to Earth in the first place in Justice League is set up here because they mentioned several times that basically Superman's death kind of announced to the universe that, hey, that these mother boxes are basically up for grabs. Like, Superman's not here to protect them. They are active. And so that's when Steppenwolf kind of arrives with the parademons and go on this search. And I thought it was cool how it's like literally Superman's like last breaths, like him yelling as he's like getting killed by Doomsday. It echoes out into the entire world, and Cyborg's mother box wakes up, and the Atlantean one wakes up, and then the Amazon one wakes up on Themyscira. I think that was just a cool visual and a very neat way of just quickly showing each one and getting you, okay, kind of, I guess, you already setting up that playing field where you know where these things are at, and you know, okay, this means Superman's death is triggering like this kind of event, and like where the rest of the plot is going to go from there.
Yeah, for sure. And then you get the part one, Don't Count on It, Batman. Basically, him trying to decide that he's going to recruit these people and being told that, I think this is in reference to what Aquaman says to him, right?
Yes.
Don't count on it, Batman. But yeah, you don't really get to meet the full squad, but still just so much more fleshed out, more thorough all around. I don't remember, this one is about 30 minutes, right?
Yeah, so this basically just goes through real quick. Of course, him meeting Arthur Curry was the big one. And then, I mean, first off, I got to say, Batman, you said he's improved a lot in this one, and I totally agree. He just feels like so much more comfortable in the role in this one to me, even compared to like the Joss Whedon version. He looks better. I think he just looks cool. Like, he looks like Bruce Wayne. Like, he's totally believable in the role. Also, we have Jeremy Irons back as Alfred. Fantastic, as always. So funny. The dry humor is great, and I love his banter with the other members of the league as well. And then I think the big conclusion to this is the attack on Themyscira by Steppenwolf to get the mother box, which already mentioned. ends. It not only ends in a huge action scene, but the whole thing is really an action scene because we get more fighting in the actual like kind of temple where it's being located. We get more Hippolyta, which is the queen of the Amazons, Wonder Woman's mother, doing more badass things. And then, of course, this is where we get our first real look at Steppenwolf. What do you think of the design compared to the Joss Whedon version?
I mean, definitely spikier and shinier. I think there was more life to him in this, whether it was like the eyes or just the facial expressions at all versus like a PS2 type villain. This stuff still was like
in the other version.
This was still like advertised as like semi unfinished or not unfinished, but just like not as high quality, I guess, as if it were to have been like the theatrical final version. Yeah. But was this, I can't remember if this was, I guess it was in this chapter when we get to hear about like the original attack on Earth, or was that in the next chapter?
That's in the Age of Heroes.
Okay.
But before we move on to that real quick, we do get the introduction to, I guess, Diana Prince in this film, this version of her. And she's stopping that attack in London. Again, this is something we got kind of like a truncated version of in the Joss Whedon version. What did you think of that scene? Because she comes in and she she murders these guys. Like, she kills them, like throwing them. First off, it reminded me of Man of Steel because I was just rewatched that, where Feora, who's the evil, I guess evil, is relative, but the Kryptonian woman warrior, she takes out like the military guys. She's flying all over the place, like she's beating them down with super speed and her super strength. It reminded me of that. Diana's throwing these guys into the walls like head first. She's kicking them. She's like blood splattering. Was that kind of like a bit of a shock to the system for you, or what did you think of that?
You kind of get the message, not necessarily with this version of Batman, but just like Batman in general, or Wonder Woman or Superman. Like, these people are like the superheroes that don't kill. Like, they're supposed to be like it's kind of alarming to see them like. Well, I will say, smashing brains. Okay, then I'll allow it. But you've always heard, at least with the Nolan Batmans, it's like no guns.
Yeah.
And then like Bruce is just like blasting people here.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, no, so I just thought that scene especially, and it's like Zack Snyder, again, I'm not a fan of him in general, and I do think this is by far his best movie. But it's like there's never an instance where he chooses, like, I guess it's better in this movie than some others. And I think this was one of the negative things that it got onto me right away, but I kind of forgot about it as I watched the movie the first time. But like, just for example, he always chooses like the cool thing, or like the thing that'll like look the best over like logic, I guess is what I would say. Like, so for example, at the end of this scene, there's like the main bad guy who's wearing like the fedora, right? And like, he's by himself, like the gun is like, he has no ammo in it. So she could she could lasso him up, she could tie him down, she could like just quickly grab him and like pin him. But instead of that, she like does the wrist like smash thing and like blows the walls off of this building with the cops like down below, and like it was just so funny to me, and like so unnecessary, but I was like, okay, whatever, I'll allow it. Like, I don't know if that stuck out to you at all, but I definitely was like, okay, this is very much Zack Snyder at work here.
Yeah, I definitely had more of a sense of that after having watched Man of Steel and revisited BVS, but I'm with you. I think that he does do that, but again, I'm like you said, I didn't really have too much of a problem with it. Yeah. But Age of Heroes Chapter 2, is that, I know I said we'll get into the dark side stuff, but was Wonder Woman's discovery at the temple, was that the Amazon temple, was that in 2 or 1?
Yeah, that was in 2. So that was after.
Okay, so we'll get, let's go into 2 now then.
Yeah.
But first, I want to talk about the dark side, the battle. She tells the story of Or I guess which did have you've seen it twice. Take the lead. I'm sorry.
No, so you're right because she goes to Bruce, and this is after, Themyscire's been attacked. They're like, okay, we got to give a warning out to the world. Like they're here, they're looking for the mother boxes. They shoot this arrow. It's magic. It goes into the world of men. It's reported on the news as like, okay, it's vandalism or arsonist, something to that effect. But she knows what it means, and they're counting on her to know what it means. So she goes, gets the arrow, jumps down into like this kind of like labyrinth crypt type thing. Presumably, this is in Greece, and she goes down into like this tomb, uses the arrow to unlock this hidden room, and that's where she sees these kind of like ancient paintings basically depicting what they experienced in the original attack. So you have parademons on the wall, you have Darkseid, you have the 3 mother boxes, and then that's when she goes after that and realizes what they're telling her. She goes to Bruce and kind of gives him, and of course the audience, all of the backstory on this previous invasion by Darkseid.
Right. And I think, first of all, just having this understanding of where Diana knows this from is super interesting and important versus just like, okay, she discovers it. She sees it on the news and now we know everything. No, to like actually get to go and like see her investigate.
Yeah.
And to just like have just more of like the process of it.
Agreed.
But then actually what she ends up telling Bruce in the Justice League, like we said, no Darkseid. This was just Steppenwolf as the big bad who's coming down and destroying everything, versus we get to see Darkseid in action trying to take over, and Steppenwolf is reduced to, like we said, like the middleman, the kind of like mid-level grunt who's just reporting back to the angry boss. So definitely go ahead.
I think in that, again, I've seen it twice now, so I should be the pro. In that flashback, do we see Steppenwolf?
I don't think so. I think it's just like Darkseid and the parademons.
Yeah, basically. And then there's those 3 kind of like sorcerer type beings.
Yeah.
Other boxes. But what did you think? I mean, it's a very cool. I mean, this is something that we had been hearing about since the set visits that they did back almost 5 years ago now, where they talked about, okay, there's this huge like flashback, sort of like Lord of the Rings prologue style battle. Did it kind of live up to that billing, like that hype? I mean, we'd
seen the battle itself, like other than Darkseid being present, I didn't think that there was like that much difference between the Justice League and this, because that scene exists. It just like comes about in a different way.
Yeah.
I guess it was like still on like a broader scale here with more Green Lanterns or more, I don't know, other supporting characters in there.
Yeah, I thought it was cool to see David Thewlis as Ares
and Zeus. I wasn't sure if that was him or not. I mean, obviously I knew it was him from Wonder Woman, but I didn't know if that was him playing this version.
Yeah, they throw his face onto like this other, I mean, I assume it's probably like a real person, but it's like CGI'd on there. I mean, it looks cool, looks great. I think it's cool that they kind of tie that back into the Wonder Woman movie. And yeah, Green Lantern, I mean, it's more violent, that's for sure. And what did you think, because we're talking about this right now, the rated R aspect of the movie? I think a lot of people scoffed at it or laughed at it and kind of wanted to be like, oh, that's just Zack Snyder, that's him doing his thing, extra violent, extra bloody. Did you think, I mean, did you have any qualms with the rated R stuff? Did you think it
never felt like too excessive or anything? Like it's not like every punch had blood splatter or like
Agreed.
I mean, obviously, like Steppenwolf goes a little harder on the Amazon, slicing some in half. Steppenwolf's own head gets sliced off, but like Batman says fuck though, so it's worth it.
Well, Cyborg says fuck as well, right?
It's just an F-bomb fest.
Yeah, so we got some of that, but in this battle, you get, I mean, the Green Lantern gets his arm cut off. Darkseid gets, Ares puts his axe into like his shoulder and blood's just like gushing out. And he gets carried away and defeated. It was cool. I thought it was really cool just to see all those characters together. You get the old gods, you get the Atlanteans, the Amazons, Green Lanterns. and yeah, I mean, I just thought it was more of what I expected to have seen in the Joss Whedon version. So I think it was just cool to get that. But going from there, because that kind of wraps up, because in the Age of Heroes, you get that backstory, and then we kind of get a little bit more going into Beloved Mother, Beloved Son, with, of course, Cyborg, and not only Victor Stone, but Barry Allen as a Flash as well, where we finally get introduced to them. It's completely different introductions than what we got in the Joss Whedon version, but this is kind of setting a lot of the backstory and the groundwork for these characters to kind of flourish in the rest of the movie.
Shout out to Gotham City University, just out there sticking it to Wisconsin. Big Ten can suck it. Gotham City all the way. That you get to see Ray Fisher and see Cyborg on the football field. You had heard about him being a player, and to see that, and then obviously the disappointment when his dad's not in the stands, that really sums up their relationship for the most part, versus like what we had just seen within the confines of the apartment and the original version. And then to see his mother and their relationship, how that did work, and then obviously leading straight into the accident that turned him into Cyborg, basically, or set him up to be turned into Cyborg. But just the thing is just like, the theme of this is just like being more thorough, more in depth, and we keep saying it, so I don't want to sound repetitive, but that's the case. Like to be able to really dig into Cyborg, especially with the role that he comes to play, like you said, throughout the rest of the movie.
Yeah. How did you feel? Because there's two main things I took from this chapter in particular. There's the Cyborg. It's like a montage of him learning about his abilities, mastering his powers. What did you think of that? Because I thought that was certainly one of the brighter points of the film, particularly with regards to Cyborg. And then, of course, we get the intro with the Barry scene, going to this, I guess it's like a job interview.
Store.
This pet store, like this dog place. But
well, with the Cyborg stuff, basically all you get in the Justice League is couldn't do that last night, and he like starts to fly. Like that's what he's talking about, like his system evolving or whatever, like constantly upgrading, and he like floats and then says that to his dad. But to actually like see more of the stuff as it comes along, as he develops, that was definitely more exciting. But then on the Barry side, I think this was some of like what obviously he had plans for like the Kiersey Clemens character and like what their relationship was going to be, and she's going to be in the Flash movie, correct? Yeah. So hopefully that'll pay off more. But like him saving her and like grabbing a hot dog, him saving her, cool. Hot dog, kind of weird, but then he feeds it to the dog. So I thought the good boys a treat. I thought it was just gonna be him saving it for later to eat, and then like when he gave it to the dogs, it made it a little better.
Yeah, no, I think it's funny you mentioned that, because watching the first time, I mean, I like laughed out loud because I was like, what in the hell? Because he put it in his pocket. And so I thought it was like, okay, it's just like a funny bit, but then it's basically him trying to weasel his way into this job by like, oh, look, I'm so good with dogs. Like I brought this thing with me to like feed them, like, you know, so that I thought that was fun. It was just a funny intro for that character, but the effects were like mind-blowingly good. I thought slowing down the time, and then how his shoes like burn off, and the asphalt moves and breaks up, and he kind of slowly like brings her to the ground, and then everything goes back to like normal speed.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Iris West character involving her, basically just a cameo at this point, so I guess that'll be more, like I said, that'll pay off more with the Flash film, but still cool, just that again showing sort of the powers of Barry and laying the foundation a little bit better before he gets turned on later. Yeah,
and I think that watching this movie made me happy to know that she's coming back in the Flash movie, but made me so bummed out that Billy Crudup is not coming back in the Flash movie as his dad. So, because I thought because there is a little bid more of Henry Allen, Billy Crudup's character, Barry Allen's father in this movie. Some different dialogue, a little bit more interaction. How do you feel about that too? I mean, of course, go Heels.
Shout out to the Heels. I mean, there just a little bit more of like, again, it's just like basically in the original version, it was just like, don't come see me anymore. You're wasting your life. But then there's more characterization here, more emotion between them. And you see him like circle back, and his dad, I really enjoyed it at the end when he's like shouting. He's like, he's got his foot in the door. He's got his foot in the door.
No, I love that. Yeah. And I also, to mention, even just the dialogue being slightly changed makes such a difference. I mean, in the first scene at this part of the movie where they're having the conversation and Henry says these certain lines to him, he says, you're best of the best. You can do whatever you want. You don't need to be tied down. And then as he walks away, Barry's talking to himself. He's like, write your own, future, it's on, whatever. Those same exact lines come back at the end of the movie when Flash is like saving the universe essentially. And he kind of like utters them again, and they're like recontextualized. I thought that was just great and like a good callback. So it's true. It is these little things that just add up to a better overall like story and experience. But then we go into chapter 4, Change Machine, which before we watched the movie, I was wondering what the hell are they talking about with that name. But of course, they're referring to the mother boxes. And then this is where the team really starts to come together, right?
Right. We get the two big things here are the under Gotham Harbor on Strikers Island? Is that like a fake Rikers Island?
Yeah, it's
but the showdown there is they try and rescue the 8 people that Steppenwolf has kidnapped and get the mother box protect the mother box. So that's the big action set piece here, which was way cooler just to see it again, more exciting action, more violence, I guess you could say. And then in addition to that, this is we're going to bring back Superman. We're putting it all together here.
Yeah. So they're in full like plot mode,
trying to come up with a solution. It's really when Cyborg is sitting them all down and like he gives a history lesson of the mother boxes. Kind of tells
that was cool.
Kind of explains what they're capable of. They use some pretty cool like analogies to explain it. And then they're like, okay, well, Superman, we could potentially bring him back. And it might be the key to, defeating Steppenwolf and stopping this from happening. And that's where it then turns to, okay, let's go get his body. Let's, put this guy into that fluid inside the ship where they birthed Doomsday. And then we can use the mother box from there to try to basically put life back into him. And it's interesting because just the whole dynamic of the scene is like completely different. You could speak to this more than I could because you just watched the Joss Whedon version. But like I know in that one, Bruce like makes like a snide comment about like Steve Trevor. And there's more like jokes, I guess. It's just not good. It's not nearly as good as like this is, where it's more like they're all kind of like earnestly like working together to try to figure it out, and they're all like trying to give each other like confidence about the situation, even though it seems completely insane.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember when the actual like when it comes to like Barry running down the ship and tapping it, we don't really get the whole. I was like, what's wrong here? Because in the original version, he like just happens to touch it right at the perfect timing, which is what they say you can't touch it a second off or whatever, or it won't work. He has to touch it right when it touches the water. And then it touches the water first here. And then he kind of had talked about like things happen weird when I approach this speed. And so then it goes backwards. And so then obviously what ends up happening, that's basically setting the table for the going back in time that he ends up doing to save the day.
Exactly. Yeah, and not only
Makes
is
it
it
much more worthwhile.
it does, yeah, it absolutely does, and I think also on top of that, it does more to set up his solo film, which we know is going to be some variation of Flashpoint, which makes perfect sense having seen this movie because we see him running that fast and messing with time. It works. Like it helps him save the day, right? So from that standpoint, you can kind of understand because in the Flashpoint comic, he tries to save his mom or like bring his mom back to life. And then of course that causes the entire universe to get super messed up. And I think, and so he learns a lesson through that. But I think him here running that fast, bringing Superman back to life, running the clock back and saving the entire Justice League from getting killed, that kind of, it gives more reason and like understanding as to why he might try to do that in his own movie.
And we also get the first Martian Manhunter tease in this chapter, which is after Martha seemingly has a conversation with Lois and then leaves, and it turns out it's Martian Manhunter. So I didn't know anything about this character going in. I knew he was going to be in here because the surprise cameo was revealed, strangely. But you get more about him at the end, which I guess we'll circle back to in the epilogue. But a little tease of him here, and then we get into All the King's Horses, which is chapter 5.
All the King's
so, All the King's Men. I thought, okay, my bad. I'm reading a site that has them all on here just so I can keep myself on track.
Alfred and Bruce are having a conversation, and at this point, they've made the decision they're going to try to bring Superman back to life. They're having this conversation actually while in the original cut of the Joss Whedon version, it was just the Flash and Cyborg who went to exhume Clark's body. And it's like there's these stupid ass jokes that they put in it, courtesy of Joss Whedon. Here, it feels, like there's a little bit more reverence for the situation. Like they're taking it a little bit more seriously. Also, Wonder Woman and Aquaman are there with them to get the body. And they're having like a nice little conversation about, Amazons versus Atlanteans. And, they're not so different after all, that kind of thing. But Alfred is talking to Bruce back in Gotham. He says, all the King's horses and all the King's men, can't put him back together. Like you're not gonna be able to do this. Like you're pushing the limit. And basically Bruce says, hey, I'm putting faith in this situation. Like you just
first time I'm ever
exactly
on faith alone. So we messed up talking about the revival. That's actually in this chapter. But also,
I didn't say the revival was last chapter. Hey,
we were talking about Barry running down the hallway and touching the mother box. That happens in this chapter.
That is true, yeah.
But some more, obviously so we kind of broke that down. But Lois, after that discussion, she has the whole like, okay, I'm finally going to move on. Which in the Justice League, that never happened. It was Bruce said bring in the big guns basically, and Lois was like the secret weapon to calm Superman down, versus here she shows up on her own accord because she was coming to finally say goodbye to Superman.
Exactly. And the reason for that goodbye is because it goes back to the Martha scene actually, where she says, hey, you haven't been showing
come
up
back
at work.
To the living.
Come back to the living. And I think it's kind of alluded to that because she does it at the beginning of the movie and then she's doing it again. Now she brings coffee when she goes to visit like the memorial, and she gives it to the police officer that's there. And, he says at this point, I wasn't sure I didn't think you were going to come today. And she's like, oh, something along the lines of like one last time or something. So it's like she's, instead of doing this and not going to work and just spending her days like kind of grieving, she's not going to do this anymore. She's going to go back and like get back into her own existence and kind of moving on. But then of course, not so fast, Lois, because we need you to fix this disaster. And
another thing in this, we get a tender moment almost between Victor and his father, when his father basically is trying to like shut things down, this evacuation that the Justice League has set up to clear out the Superman ship. But then his father is trying to override it, and then he realizes that it's his son and the crew, and then he's like, oh, never mind, I was mistaken, like everybody out and stay out. and he like basically teams up with them to help allow this to happen. And then at the end, after Superman has come back, the mother box has been awakened. Steppenwolf comes for it, and his father ends up sacrificing himself in order to superheat the mother box so that they can track it wherever Steppenwolf takes it.
Yeah, well, and it's so funny too. And I don't think I'm trying. Oh yeah, okay. So I sent this in the group chat earlier, and it's so it was this tweet showing, because in the Joss Whedon version, they finish fighting Superman. He flies off, and then right after he flies off, oops, the boom tube pops open, and Steppenwolf grabs the mother box and dips out. Well, they look stupid as hell. The heroes look horribly incompetent, and it just doesn't make sense. In this version, Silas grabs the mother box and heads inside.
Mm-hmm.
Steppenwolf is like, oh, he's like, damn it, where the hell is this mother box at? And then that's when he goes into the building where the ship's at. He's like tearing through. Silas is trying to get the machine set up. So he overheats it, and he has to close the chamber. And he activates the machine after Cyborg like gets in there, and Steppenwolf and he are kind of like looking on. He turns into like dust. He like gets vaporized, and then Steppenwolf, of course, manages to get it and leave. And then the heroes come in, and Cyborg's like, my dad is like dead. And I also love this part where like it's like he's explaining what just happened, and Barry Allen is like, oh my god, like when he realizes like his dad had like literally just got vaporized in front of him. Like it's probably not even in the script, but it like feels like such a genuine like moment of like, oh my, like I feel like terrible like that this just happened. And they kind of feel like they failed in a way,
because initially they think that his dad thought that he was trying to destroy the box.
Exactly.
And so they're like, why did he do that and kill himself for no reason? But then they realized that it was to superheat it, which we had seen earlier as they were testing the material from Superman's ship.
Exactly.
And it ends up that he knew exactly what he was doing, and that he was helping them follow them, because they'd made the point earlier that they had no idea where the base was, so they didn't know how to attack.
Exactly.
But
it's just, again, those little details, character moments, making the story more logical or like adding more weight to it. Again, elements that were completely absent in the other version.
But so that allows basically everything that goes on in the final chapter, something darker.
Yes.
That sets it all up there, where Superman had pieced out back to his ranch, back to his farm, and basically Lois is able to convince him there to come back to who he is, to remember who he is. Meanwhile, the rest of the Justice League is gearing up to go forward without Superman.
Right.
And so they go off to Russia or wherever this is. No Russian family in this version, by the way. The farm, the little people that got stuck. Do you remember them from the original version?
Unfortunately, I do. Yeah.
But the attack on Steppenwolf's like fortress is so much better in this. Like, it wasn't awful in the first one, but
right.
First of all, it takes place at night, which makes it 10 times cooler. But Batman is very much like, you had posted that tweet about like this will be like, you'll know it when you see it, but this is like one of the best characterizations of this character on screen that we've ever seen. Like, fans will go crazy for it. And I had seen that tweet prior to watching, and so I kept it in mind, and I was trying to figure it out. And I thought it was this scene from Batman, where he's driving the Batmobile through the city and like killing all the parademons and grappling his way onto the base and just like taking people out. And it felt very much like, almost like the Arkham games, like that version of Batman, and like the way that he was just going about like kicking ass and taking names. And so I thought that was it, but it ends up that it is another scene.
It is. I mean, that part again was epic. I totally agree with you. And it felt even like the Justice League animated series at times, like it was Batman. He's still competent. He still has like his strengths. He's not trying to fight like a god level character. Like the parademons are relatively, for him, he can handle it, especially with the different weapons and like tools that he has. So I thought that was pretty damn neat. But then of course you have the other heroes. They're, teaming up. They're all doing like their different part of the plan and the missions. Flash in particular is like running this huge lap around the city. trying to generate enough speed so that he can come and touch Cyborg at the right time and separate the Unity. But it gets messed up. Superman arrives on the scene, so it's a completely different arrival compared to the other version. What did you think about that in particular?
Honestly, like at this point, it was so engrossing in the attack that I'd kind of forgotten that Superman was even a thing. Like you get the breakaway where Superman goes to see Alfred and basically get the 411 on what's going on. But he just like Steppenwolf is getting ready to take out Cyborg, and then Superman comes up out of nowhere. It was kind of like a in-game style reaction in me of like oh my god, let's go. I don't even remember at this point, even though I was the one who just watched it. How does he show back up in Justice League?
In Justice League, he I don't even remember the exact scenario, but he's like, he says the dumbest line ever. He says something like, "I'm a big fan of justice" or something like that. It's horrible. But also I got to mention, I mean, his reappearance here is fantastic, but in the lead up to that, Cyborg's trying to, work on the Unity, and Aquaman and Wonder Woman they're all fighting Steppenwolf. It looks great. The action's awesome. The score is booming, and it feels like they fall down like to like the floor of this like tower. And I mean, it feels like desperate. Like I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, oh my God, like they are really like they're struggling right now to handle this guy. And then, of course, that's the perfect setup for Superman to arrive and just completely own him, which he does. His suit, what do you think of his suit? I thought it looked great.
Back in black, baby.
Back in black. You couldn't even tell because, of course, we know that suit is the blue one from the movie, but they've just edited it to look black. And I think I mean, you wouldn't even know if you weren't told that it wasn't black.
I did not know that. So.
And so then
case in point.
Exactly. So, but this sets up the scene that I mentioned in my tweet that I was hinting at and didn't want to spoil for anyone. They get the Unity. They're about to rip it apart. Superman, saves, comes in, kind of saves the day. He's got him pinned down. Steppenwolf, that is. And then the portal opens behind them, and it's Darkseid and like his entire army. And you're like, oh my God, are they like about to like just come on through? And then Cyborg says like, oh my God, it's too late. Like we didn't get it done in time. And Batman's like, oh no. And then all of a sudden there's this huge explosion, like massive, like a nuke going off. Everything's vaporized. The entire town is like wiped away. And Flash, oh my God, like, Flash is like standing there and he's like, oh my God, he's injured, mind you. Like he was shot. I thought that was a great moment as well, because it shows like he's not like invulnerable, because he is incredibly strong. But he starts running. He's like, okay, you got to break your rule. You got to go the speed of light. You got to go faster than the speed of light. And he does. And I mean, the score, the effects, like the dialogue coming back from his talk with his father earlier. He's like, Dad, like no matter what happens, like I'm the best of the best. Like I was actually, alongside these other like amazing people. And then, he has that line where he's like, write your own future, write your own past. It almost reminded me of like a great like Nike commercial or something, which actually it's like these like fun little like almost like inspirational like taglines that he just throws in there. But then when he actually gets to the Unity, the mother boxes, and he touches Cyborg, he's running the entire clock back. The entire town is like being restructured and rebuilt. You see Superman's body like recompose. You see Cyborg's like skeleton like covered up again. He like reforms, and then he touches it, and then it's like, oh, like holy shit! Like he went back in time. He saved the day, and then from there they pull the Unity apart. They kick Steppenwolf's ass. What did you think of Steppenwolf's death? Because it was
Aquaman. I was surprised. Well, first of all, I want to say, even though this was like a remake of, or like a version of a movie we've seen before, I was genuinely invested in not knowing what was going on. Like,
exactly. Yeah.
Like, because we knew that this was supposed to be a trilogy or whatever, a 2-part movie at least. Like, yeah. I didn't know and we had been told it ended on a cliffhanger. I didn't know if it was going to end with Darkseid winning and it was going to be an end game type thing where, okay, We've got to figure out how to fix this. They kind of did like, if when it was like the opposite of like Thanos winding back the clock and getting his way. Like this time, the Justice League wound back the clock and got their way.
Exactly.
But
Agreed.
so I was like actually into it. Like, okay, I actually don't know what's gonna happen here. But I was excited to see Aquaman get the stab through the heart, and then like if that wasn't enough, let's just have Wonder Woman slice his head off for good measure. So that was pretty freaking cool way to end it. And it also just kind of put Steppenwolf in his place of being like, okay, he wasn't this big bad like he was in Justice League. He was just like a minion.
Yeah, no, totally agree. It was an awesome, fitting death. I mean, even at the same time, though, I almost felt kind of sorry for him because he is like a pathetic little minion who's like being forced to go out into the universe and like take over all these worlds. So that kind of sets up because at the end of that, the heroes, Darkseid kind of says, okay, that didn't work clearly. I guess I'm gonna have to go, and do this the old way. I'm going to have to go there myself. I'm going to have to bring my armada, invade, etc. So that is kind of the cliffhanger. It kind of sets up a sequel of him invading and taking on the Justice League himself. Then we get a big hero shot. All the heroes climb up and out of this tower. They're standing up there. The sun rises. Hey, they won. Then we go into the epilogue. And the epilogue is basically, the best part of it is the first part, which is basically this big montage. Cyborg, Silas Stone's, Silas Stone, which is Cyborg's dad, he goes back, and you can hear the audio message that he left for Victor earlier in the movie that Victor originally like destroyed. And he listens to it, and he's just giving like all this advice. And he's saying, I've always proud of you, always loved you. I wasn't there for you, like I made mistakes. And then on top of that, you get to see a montage of the other heroes. Like Barry goes back to his dad and says, hey, I got a real job. Like I'm going to be working in a crime lab now. And Aquaman says bye to Mara and Volko. He's going to go see his dad, which kind of sets up Aquaman. And then, Bruce and Wonder Woman are setting up like the Hall of Justice in Wayne Manor, which is awesome. And of course it ends with Superman, his mom gets the farm back. They get the Kent farm. Bruce Wayne makes the flex comment about buying the bank to get the house back, and Superman, Clark thanks Bruce for that and everything that he did. And then it ends with Superman out on the streets of Metropolis. He opens up his shirt, and of course the Superman suit is on underneath. So he's going to be saving the day, and that's kind of how it ends. But there is more, Zach.
And
this seems like the most controversial part of the movie, I think.
Yeah, so it then goes into what was the post-credit scene of the original Justice League.
Yes.
Which is Deathstroke, who we had never seen before, played by Joe Manganiello, meeting up with Lex Luthor, who has escaped from Arkham. And it's more in-depth, though, this time. Basically, instead of just hinting at what's going to happen, Lex Luthor gives him this big information, which is that Deathstroke has had like a run-in with the Bat and wants to kill him. He wants revenge. And so Lex Luthor tells him that his name is Bruce Wayne. And then that ends as if it's going to be them teaming up. Then we get a flash, which another thing here that kind of like there was no transition or anything. It just cuts as if the scene is continuing.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird. But then we get to this nightmare future, the like alternate reality once again of, I don't know if it's an alternate reality or a future reality. It's still like up in the air, I guess.
Yeah.
Because we'd seen the nightmare sequences in Batman vs. Superman, the tease of Bruce and him and Superman basically when Batman is taken hostage out in like the desert and Superman shows up and there's like the hints of what's to come about like talking about Lois and everything. But in this sequence, that was back when Bruce had that dream and Barry showed up as well and told him that Lois is the key, which they reference. We didn't mention that, but Bruce references that to Diana. But so in this like dystopian Mad Max style future, the good guys and the bad guys have all teamed up. We've got Batman leading his ragtag team of who's left. Mira is there, the Flash, Cyborg, Deathstroke. They're all together, and we know that Wonder Woman has been killed and Aquaman. We saw both their deaths in the movie previously, like in other cuts to this alternate reality. That was when Barry was running down the tunnel as well in the ship. And there is a new person joining them, and it is Jared Leto's Joker from the Suicide Squad. And much of this, they're basically trying to navigate their way through something like the area before he arrives. And you think it's Darkseid, that's right. You think it's going to be a bad guy. But we get this whole lowdown between the Joker and Batman, and basically Joker's alluding to the fact that he killed Robin and destroyed Wayne Manor and all of that we don't get the concrete details, but it was basically a little bit more information about what we knew from the suit that we'd seen in BVS. We do not get the "We Live in a Society" line, but just more in depth about the two of them. Joker's like, I'm your best friend. You can't kill me. And Bruce is like, oh, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to make it suffer. Like Harley Quinn asked me to.
Yeah.
So then that he shows up, it's too late. And it turns out it's Superman, bad guy Superman, who's been ruling with Darkseid apparently.
Yeah. And
then we get another post-credits scene, not post-credits, but another epilogue, which is Martian Manhunter showing up back in non-dystopian future and basically telling Bruce that he's here to help for the war that is coming.
Yes.
And that's it. So before we wrap up, final thoughts on just like that epilogue and the divisiveness.
Yeah. So I think, okay, so when I was watching it the first time, I thought the Lex Deathstroke scene in particular was like pretty neat. I thought it was an improvement over that original scene that we got. Even though it definitely worked more as like a post-credit scene. And then it does cut to that nightmare sequence. And I had been waiting for it the whole movie. I was wondering when it was going to pop up. And I was kind of shocked that they waited so late for it. So they're getting through it. Joker's talking to Batman. And I'm just like, oh, God, I'm like, I was so ready for the movie to end on such a good high note with the montage and Silas Stone kind of narrating everyone. I thought it was just so strong, and then it went into this, and I'm like, oh my God, what the hell is going on? And I was so relieved when it turned out to be like the nightmare, like he woke up. Because I think you needed to make it clear that, okay, this is a nightmare. Like it's not clear if it's a premonition necessarily, but it's not real. Like in the current reality, Bruce is just awake and he just had it. And then I liked the Martian Manhunter scene. I think, again, did we need it? No. But did he look cool? Yeah. And was it cool to have him in the movie? Sure. So I thought they had a fun little bit of banter there. It was, again, setting up a sequel that we may or may never get. But all in all, Zack Snyder got to do what he wanted to do. He put it in. He gave the fans exactly what they wanted, probably what they deserved after the years of fighting for it. So, hey, more power to him. I could have been done smoothly and in a better cut of this film, would those things be included? Probably not. But I was fine with it. I thought it was fine to see, everything that we could.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. Like we said off the top, we were wrong. This was pretty awesome. This was very enjoyable. I had said to you last night, do we need to restore the Snyderverse? I don't know. I'm not opposed to it. Yeah. I'm not going to go out campaigning for it to happen, though. If they throw it on HBO Max, I'm definitely going to be there watching. I'll be interested in it.
Yeah.
But I'm still not completely sold just on the fact that Man of Steel, BVS, all right. But Justice League, pretty good. Really right. Enjoyable. Like, I'm not sold that it's a surefire hit. Obviously there was so much hype, so much anticipation and time to make sure that this was the perfect fine-tuned version. I know it was the original vision, but there's definitely stuff that was changed after, in retrospect, hearing the criticism and figuring out how to make it the best possible version.
Right.
Is that going to be a guaranteed thing to happen if they were to just go ahead and greenlight Justice League 2, Zack Snyder's Justice League 2, and go forward? Who knows? Like, right. We'll see. Well, but like I said, I'm not opposed to it.
Well, okay. So right before we wrap up, quick, where does this rank in your DC EU rankings? Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Birds of Prey, all those.
I would say I need to rewatch the first Wonder Woman. I haven't watched that since like shortly after theaters, probably.
Okay.
My current was Birds of Prey at 1, Wonder Woman at 2, and Shazam at 3. I think this is probably coming in at the 2 spot, maybe even ahead of Birds. It's at the top.
Yeah.
If not, it's 1 or 2 probably. If not, if not 1.
Yeah, I think I really do like Wonder Woman. I really do like Aquaman as well. So I'd say this is top 3 for me for sure. I think, it could definitely be argued as being number 1. But for me, it's definitely up there. And then also, of course, again, you can't help but make the comparisons. If this was, like, if you had to rank this among, like, the MCU, which is like 22, however many films they have now, how would you compare it to those?
I don't know if you made the same statement, but I know Jake did in our group last night that this was better than Endgame, which I'm not on board with. I don't know if that's just like a personal preference of the characters over there. I know Jake has always been more of a DC guy than Marvel, just at heart through like the comics and everything, and his personal preference. I would say this is like 9 or 10 in the MCU for me, maybe.
Okay.
It's I mean, it's better than some of them, obviously, but it's not like I'm not saying this is better than Endgame or Infinity War, and I think that's just the goodwill that franchise has built up over consistently putting stuff out versus one thing out of like a bunch,
Yeah, no, fair play for sure. I think it's one of my favorite superhero movies of the last, of this kind of era, I would say, especially among the DC field, just because it has been so hit or miss and like up and down. But I mean, this is, I think, a success story for sure. So I'm glad it happened. I'm glad that we got to see it. I'm glad you and I enjoyed it. And I mean, who knows what the future holds, but at least we got this.
Who knows? Yeah, at least this will satisfy the people who have been begging and campaigning for years. I hope that they all found it to be as incredible as they anticipated it would be. So good for them. Good for Zack Snyder. Glad he got his vision out there. Good for us for not being too proud to admit that we were wrong. Hopefully other people will follow suit and not let their bad, I guess their ill will cloud their judgment here, because I actually really enjoyed this and I didn't really expect to. So I am admitting it, and let us know what you all thought. I mean, thank you all for listening, to tuning into all of this 2.5 hour recap. It's almost as long as the movie itself. So if you want to watch 4 hours and then listen to 2.5 hours, just spend your whole day dedicated to the Snyder Cut. But thank you again for listening. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's been a blast. For more, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube, where we post all of the podcast episodes. You can find those accounts at Inside Film Room.
And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, Amazon, all of them. Go tune in, give us a rate and a review, and come back next week. We're going to do a double header, I believe. I'll be tackling Bad Trip on Netflix, and Johnny's headed to the theater to check out Nobody. So be sure to come back and tune in next time.